The Texas sun burned through the courthouse windows, spilling gold across the warped floorboards where Lorie Mayfield stood alone. Dust motes danced in the still air, slow and cruel, as if time itself wanted to linger on her undoing. The parchment in her trembling hands was yellowed and torn, the ink faded by years of her father's sweat. It wasn't just land on that paper, it was memory, legacy. Every fence post her father had sunk before the fever took him. The judge peered over his spectacles, voice flat as a spent pistol. Without a formal deed, the land ain't yours, Miss Mayfield. Annexed to Boone Ranch Holdings. Then came the gavel, one sharp crack, like a gunshot through bone. The room exhaled in whispers, too proud. Foolish girl, Lorie didn't cry. She just straightened her back, slipped the papers into her coat, and walked out into the blinding noon. By the time she mounted her horse, the town's eyes were on her, waiting for her to break. She didn't. She rode out into the wind, the sound of the gavel still echoing behind her, vowing she'd never beg, not even from the man who took her home. Texas stretched wide and merciless beneath a sky so blue it looked carved from glass. The earth was cracked and sun-bleached, where dust clung to boots and every breath tasted of grit. Wooden fences split the plains like scars, marking what men called theirs. On the far edge, Boone Ranch sprawled endless acres of golden grass and stubborn cattle, a kingdom built from sweat and sign paper. In the nearby town of Harrow Creek, deeds held more power than bullets, and men like Thatcher Boone ruled without raising their voices. Lorie Mayfield knew that kind of power only from the outside looking in. She'd grown up fighting the land, nursing dying crops through drought and hunger. Her calloused hands told her story better than any words. Boone owned the land for ambition. Lorie clung to it for love. Both were prisoners of the same hard Texas soil. The sun was sinking low when Lorie rode up to Boone Ranch, its fences casting long shadows over the dust. Thatcher Boone stood by the corral, the light catching the edge of his rifle and the weariness in his eyes. She slid off her horse, boots hitting the ground like a challenge. "Please," she said, voice tight but steady, "don't take my home. It's all I've got left." Boone studied her torn dress, fierce stare, trembling hands that refused to show fear. "Only way that land stays yours," he said quietly, "is if it's my wife's." The words fell heavy as stone. No ring, no tenderness, just a bargain carved in pride. Her breath caught, fury and shame warring in her chest. "I'm not a trade," she whispered. "No," he said, "you're a survivor." She looked past him, toward her fading land. "I marry you," she said at last. "I stay on my land and I stay me." The mayor's office smelled of old ink and colder mornings. A single window let in the pale light as Lorie stood beside Thatcher, her hands clasped so tightly the knuckles went white. No flowers, no music, only the scratch of a pen signing her name, Lorie Mayfield, becoming Lorie Boone. The deputy stamped the page without a word, and just like that, she was married. Outside, the wind carried no congratulations. Back at her cabin, the familiar door creaked, but something had changed. Boone's men were on the roof, hammering shingles, patching holes she'd learned to live with. As per the agreement, one muttered. When Thatcher arrived, she glared. "You put that in the contract. You're not doing this alone," he said simply. He stayed to mend the stove, to chop the wood. She hated the way his silence wasn't cruel and how that kindness unsettled her. More than his deal ever had. The Texas sun blazed high, baking the earth until it shimmered. Dust rose around Thatcher Boone as he swung his pick into the hard ground beside Lorie's cabin. His shirt clung with sweat, muscles straining, breath steady. He said nothing, just kept digging, each strike echoing across the empty fields. Lorie watched from the doorway, arms crossed, telling herself she didn't care. Yet when the bucket of water cooled in her hands, she walked toward him anyway. "You'll burn out in this heat," she said, voice softer than she meant it to be. He paused, took the cup, and nodded once. Their fingers brushed just a second, but enough. Then her boots slipped on loose dirt. Before fear could rise, his hands were there, catching her, solid as oak. For that heartbeat, everything stopped: the wind, the sun, even the ache inside them. Two strangers, bound by need, standing closer than pride allowed. The storm rolled in without mercy, turning the sky black and the land to mud. Rain pounded the cabin roof like fists, wind howling through the cracks as if the whole world wanted in. Inside, Lorie lay shivering beneath a worn quilt, her skin burning with fever. Her breaths came shallow, lost in the roar outside. When the door burst open, it wasn't the storm that entered, it was Thatcher, soaked to the bone, eyes sharp with worry. "Lorie," he called, kneeling beside her. She didn't answer. He stoked the dying fire, boiled water, crushed herbs with trembling hands. Hour after hour, he stayed by her side, wiping her brow, whispering her name. When she stirred, eyes unfocused, her voice was barely a breath. "You weren't supposed to care," she murmured. His thumb brushed her cheek, gentle as the rain easing outside. "I didn't plan to," he said, "but I do." The fever passed, but peace didn't follow. Days later, while sorting through her father's worn journal, Lorie found a folded document tucked between its pages. Her name stared back at her in cold ink: marriage agreement, dissolvable after harvest. The words struck like a bullet to the chest. Her fingers shook as she read the rest. Every line proof that their union had been nothing but a convenient contract, a loophole carved by Boone's lawyers. The man who'd held her hand through the storm had once planned her as a clause. When Thatcher rode up that evening, she met him outside, eyes blazing. The paper hit the dirt between them. "I'm your legal loophole," she said, voice trembling. He bent, picked it up, his face shadowed. "It started that way," he confessed quietly, "but not anymore." Her throat tightened. "Then you should have told me." She turned toward the cabin. "At least I wouldn't have hoped." The door closed, soft but final. Snow fell thick and relentless, swallowing the mountains in silence. Lorie's cabin, half buried under white, creaked with every gust. Inside, the fire was dying low, its last embers painting faint light across her face. She sat wrapped in her shawl, eyes heavy with exhaustion and pride. The world outside had gone still, but inside her, everything still stormed. Then came a knock, soft, then harder. The door pushed open, and Thatcher stepped in, breath clouding the air, coat dusted with snow. "You shouldn't be here," she whispered. "You shouldn't be alone," he answered. He set down his gloves, fed the fire, his movements careful, almost reverent. "You lied to me," she said, voice brittle as ice. He met her eyes. "I did. But I'm here to keep you warm." He spread his coat beside her and sat close, not touching, just sharing the heat. Outside, the storm raged. Inside, something finally melted. Weeks slipped into spring, and the land that once looked barren now shimmered gold beneath the sun. The snow had vanished, leaving behind wildflowers and promise. Inside the cabin, Lorie's shawl hung beside Thatcher's coat, two lives quietly entwined. One morning, he came to her with a small wooden box, his hands rough but steady. Inside lay a silver ring he'd shaped himself, edges uneven, but made with care. He knelt before her, eyes warm. "No courthouse, no bargain, just this," he said softly. Lorie's breath caught, tears glinting like dew. "Yes," she whispered, voice trembling, in every sunrise. Outside, their little boy, Elias, chased the wind through tall grass, laughter carrying across the fields. The neighbors called her Mrs. Boone now, not from law, but love. The land that once divided them now bound them whole. What began as survival had quietly become home. The prairie glowed beneath a sinking sun. The Boone Ranch standing quiet against the horizon, a home built from dust, pride, and forgiveness. The narrator's voice settled like wind through the grass. In a land of paper and fences, it murmured, theirs was claimed by choice. A contract became a promise. Strangers became a home. The story of Lorie and Thatcher wasn't about fortune or power, it was about the courage to stay. When running seemed easier, to love where only loss had grown before. And now, a question for you. Would you marry for survival, if love might come later? Remember, love isn't found, it's built, like fences and trust, one plank at a time. If you believe love can grow from the hardest soil, like this video and subscribe for more tales of heart, grit, and redemption.